Hi there, welcome to the Farmer's Shadow. My name is Paul. In this episode, we're going to talk about alternatives to using chemical fertilizers. I found over the years that using seed meals and other ingredients that are available at your local feed store can be a really good alternative to using some chemical additives. We'll talk about a number of things that I use here, and it might change in your area depending on what's available. But we also talk about when it's good to till and when it's not good to till. So I'm not really no-till, but I'm kind of low tillage. And we're going to talk about why you might till and why you might not till. So, yep, that's coming up next. Thank you. What I've found over the years, instead of kind of investing in some really expensive pre-made organic fertilizer, which is out there, they have amazing stuff that you can find. And in fact, if it's a really small scale project that you're doing, I would just lean towards that initially. If it's a little bit larger, one of the things that I've done a lot, and I talk about this in my classes, is this concept of finding some ingredients locally that work as basically soil food. You know, one of the things that's really important is just kind of feeding the biology in the soil. And the more diverse the diet is, the healthier and more diverse the biology. What kind of my inspiration for this type of feeding, it's nothing new whatsoever. People have been doing it for a long time. Just basically, even from, you know, you see, you know, we'll see pictures in like school books when we're a kid of Native Americans putting fish in the ground and then growing their crops on it, which is not exactly true. They took fish that was on the shore that had died and their fish waste and put it in the ground and grew things on it. So, you know, these inputs to kind of build fertility is nothing new. People knowing that growing things in the same place, they're going to need to replace the nutrients that are being extracted when you grow something there. It's a good idea to look at fertility as kind of like a bank account, and you're constantly depositing instead of just withdrawing, because they're at the time that you have a deficit in fertility, you're really kind of late to the game. If your plants run out of food, then it's really hard to like quickly deposit and get those plants up to snuff. They're literally stressing out from lack of nutrients. So you want to avoid that. Real often, one of the things you want to avoid is just stress to plants in general. They'll just do better. So kind of my philosophy is I'm always adding something every time that I clear the old crop out and I put new crops in. I want to put something, and it definitely is in the form of compost, which has some nutrients in it, and then compost breaks down and releases more nutrients by all the biological action in the soil. But at the same time, something a little more concentrated that really I look at as food for biology. And I'm kind of trying to not use the word fertilizer, because, you know, just that term fertilizer came about by the green revolution, when it was like all of a sudden you have to like come up with a synthesized food for plants, and they called it fertilizer. And so I'd rather, you know, there's no fertilizer out in nature. It's just nutrients that get back into the nutrient cycle one way or the other. And so this book I use in a lot of my courses is Steve Solomon's book, How to Growing Food in Hard Times. It's a fantastic book, a really good primer for anyone advanced in gardening and farming or a beginner. It's set up in a really great way. And one of the really cool tips that Steve has in this book is COF, or it's an acronym for Complete Organic Fertilizer. Now, it's not complete, and you know, you can call it organic because there were these living things, but at the same time, it just kind of gives you this framework to find some ingredients. And the whole idea is in your local area. You don't really have to follow the exacting you know, recipe that Steve Solomon does or anyone does. You just kind of look in your local area, what's available, and you basically look at feed stores. And the feed stores in the city are going to be really limited. The feed stores out in the country, they're really going to have a wider variety of supplements that they either carry on a regular basis or they can get a hold of. And you can ask them, hey, I'm looking for some type of seed meal, really dense food in seeds. That's what they are. They're concentrated nutrients. And they could be byproducts from some type of industry like flaxseed. And flaxseed, you know, there's lots and lots of it grown for flaxseed oil for people, to make linseed oil for furniture finishes and stuff like that, and then ground flaxseed or just flaxseed in general to sell for people consumption or animal consumption. There tends to be a byproduct in flaxseed meal, or they call it linseed meal, and you can find that in ground up meal form, or sometimes you'll find it in pelletized form where it's been stabilized, because it still has some oils in it and it can go rancid. That's not going to harm soil life, but it's going to be all these nutrients, condensed nutrients in these seeds, in these meals, and these fats, and the proteins, and all the things that are in there. Basically, is a really concentrated, slow release food for the soil. So that's just one example. You can find organic cottonseed meal. You can find organic soybean meal. Rice bran is one that's very, very common. You can find it in a meal form, or you can find it in a stabilized pellet form. Rabbit pellets, the small ones are best because they're easy to apply. And it might sound funny that throwing pellets of things out onto your soil, but it's really convenient. No dust, real easy to apply. And as soon as a little bit of moisture is applied to them, they expand and they turn back into that meal or that crumble that they were before they were run through a pellet mill. So there's endless things that you can find, and I tend to lean towards things that are really concentrated. I like either alfalfa pellets or small rabbit pellets. They could be organic or not organic. I don't try to like really get too dogmatic about the ingredients of some of these things, because if there's something on it, one of the best places for things to be broken down is amongst a lot of biology. So if there happens to be some residues of something on it, I'm not too concerned. It is a personal choice that I've made. You can you know, do whatever you want to do, but I'm not too concerned about that. One of the other ingredients you'll run across is beet pulp. And so that's a byproduct from the sugar beet industry. Again, it's like a ground up vegetable that is full of minerals. Beets are just mineral rich plants. They are full of sugars, all kinds of vitamins, minerals, you name it, fiber, and sometimes they're organic, sometimes they're actually GMO beets. Now, I'm on the fence about that. I use them, but not all the time. I'm kind of wondering if I could find them that are not GMO beets. How could I find out if they're GMO beets? The byproduct is basically they pulp them, they squeeze them, they make a sugar from those beets, and then the pulp is left over. They dry it and they sell it as an animal treat or an animal supplement. They're probably GMO beets. But again, I'm gonna leave that up to you if you want to, you know, in a way support that industry or not, whatever. But that's another ingredient. There's many. There's fish meal. Now that's a product from the fishing industry. It's all the bones and skins and heads and all the byproducts from different fishing industries. It's ultra concentrated minerals and nitrogen and all kinds of nutrients. And it's the most expensive, probably 80 bucks a bag for a 50-pound bag. So if you have a budget, that would the most bang for your buck. Kelp, it's Kelp Meal. It's a byproduct left over from the kelp industry, and they're taking all kinds of ingredients from it, and then there's all kinds of minerals, growth stimulants, nutrients in the pulp that's left over, and it's in a ground up form that's real easy to apply. Again, kind of on the high end. If you're on a really budget, I would lean towards some rabbit pellets, the really tiny ones, easy to apply. Also, if you look at the ingredients, they're fortified with all kinds of minerals and other supplements. That's all great for, because literally we're feeding animals, the earthworms, all the arthropods in the soil. They're processing this and turning it into food for mycelium, for the fungi, for the bacteria, all the other biology in the soil. They're feeding, breeding, dying, eating each other, and releasing these nutrients to the soil. That's going to benefit the plants. And if there was one thing that's the most important, really, it's just biology in the soil, really biologically rich soil. And this will help promote that. Now, I think it's a great idea to get soil tests and kind of look at that, help guide you in what kind of nutrients to add to the soil. And a lot of times it's really not going to hurt if you just put alfalfa pellets or rabbit pellets. Oyster shell is another one. Comes in a flake form, a granular form, and a powder form. They're all good. If I could find it in the powder form, they call it flour, I'd lean towards that. It's just smaller. It's going to slowly get broken down and into this system quicker. Calcium should be way up there with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but it's it was recognized as one of those really important essential nutrients, but no one's really caught on that it's that important. So that's another real important building block for plants and the whole soil food web. So that's kind of my concept is finding ingredients, applying them to the soil surface. If it's really new soil and it's really marginal, and you can see that it's not very fertile, you can see that it's a light colored, it's rocky, it's sandy, there has not been a lot of life in it, you can choose to till it in along with some amendments and till in that fertility at the same time. If you think it's fairly healthy live soil, the less disturbance the better, but don't really be that dogmatic about no disturbance. Disturbance stimulates the soil. It's not that big of a deal. So the whole no-till movement I think is great, but at the same time I don't want to really get pigeonholed into certain things where you just kind of follow the herd. It's good to know more about it and not just say, well, you only do this, you always do this and never do that. So I think that's it for kind of a quick rundown on preparing these beds and kind of a concept of building fertility. So thanks for watching.